On time live.
And we are live on TCTV, Channel 8, and YouTube.
All right, very good. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to the March 4th Advisory Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. To start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could we have a moment of silence for Mr. Henshaw?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I think he'd like that. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
If we could all live to his age, we'd be
Oh.
doing good.
Yeah, he was a good man.
And contribute as much as he did throughout.
Oh, yeah. He had a good sense of humor. Good Yankee stock. Okay.
All right. Start with approval of the meeting minutes. Minutes for, let's see, February 4th. Everyone should have received those. Deb sent those out. If everyone's had a chance to review them, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to accept minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Does anyone have any comments, redactions, or anything they need done to the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll go around. Well, I'm going to roll call the members that were present, that were on the committee at the time. Bev and Bob, I know you hadn't quite joined the committee yet, so. Tony?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, next up is the meeting, advisory committee meeting minutes for February 18th. Have been sent out.
Motion to accept the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Amy seconds.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Tony?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. Next on, those will go out onto the page either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. Next up under old business will be committee updates. We still got a couple. Amy, do you have anything going on with your committee?
Yeah, we had a meeting. Let me just get to my notes over here. We did talk about the previous sections that we had. So the way we do it is we're gonna talk about sections of the document, and then the following meeting go back and see if we have come to a consensus, sort of let everybody go back to their respective larger committees, do any research they need to do. So the full documents that are being basically sort of pulled apart and combined to recreate a new district agreement are on the district website. So if people want to see what the meetings are like, those are posted. So you just go to the nrsd.org website and then choose the school committee pull down, and at the bottom it says RAAC, and the meetings are there if people want to see them. I'm pretty sure the video is there. I don't know if there's a transcript. And then the documents that, not the one we're working on, obviously, but the older documents are there from 1955, 1977, and 2004. We did discuss what Will had asked me to bring up, which was, since the Templeton Center School is being leased by the district, and it sits in the town of Templeton, part of the current regional agreement and standard procedure is that the town that holds the building is responsible for those overage costs if there needs to be a big repair. Right now, which is the amount set in the 50s, I believe, was a $5,000 cap. So if the amount of repair is $5,000 or less, then the district pays for it, sort of as the tenant of the building. But then if there are any large expenses that exceed that $5,000 as it's written right now, then it would roll to the town. So my question to the committee, which again is visible on the recording if anyone's interested, was, since the elementary school only resides in Templeton, there isn't one in the other district town, then should not the expenses be shared? Whether they want to talk about working it on the same percentage basis as the yearly requests are when the budget comes around, or whatever, like it's roughly like an 85-15%. So that was one thing we spoke about. We also talked about the makeup of the school committee, which is currently 5 members from Templeton and 3 from Phillipston. And the discussion revolves around changing those numbers to have a more equitable composition. And again, the discrepancy is, if one town makes up a smaller percentage, then what becomes fair? So there is discussion to create an environment in which both towns have an equal voice, because the concern is the smaller portion. In this case, it's Phillipston. Like, there's no secret here. The smaller portion, if they have something they want to stick to, the feeling is Templeton can sort of overrule because of the composition. So we want to take that out. Obviously, like, we want everyone to have a vested interest in keeping the district great for all of the kids. No one on this committee wants one town to feel slighted over another. And all of us, I'm sure, as residents, agree with that. We want the children to get the benefit, which in this case is the education. So those are just some topics we've discussed. It's going to be a long process, like I said before, anywhere from 18 months to 3 years for the regional agreement to be amended, voted on, submitted. The towns need to look at it, and then it gets submitted to the state. So there's a long road ahead of us, and this is just the beginning. So again, those meetings are on the NRSD website. Go to the nrsd.org site and then choose the drop down for school committee, and it's there at the bottom. And if you have any questions about anything you see there, you can contact the group's secretary, Mrs. Susan Barney, who's right with the district. Her email is on the site.
Go ahead, Bev.
There's been a lot of discussion for more years than I can even tell you about the district agreement. And one of the issues has always been the fact that the school would not fix small things. They would let them stack up until they were over $5,000. This is a reality. It has happened. There has also been a discussion for many years about the inequality because we pay more. So what I've heard just in passing over the years is that Templeton wanted enough representation because they pay a larger share. That's what I've always heard. That's what I've heard people say. This is not a new thing. This is about time this got done. I suggest that maybe you take a poll of other communities and see how they do this. Because Quabbin must be made out of communities of different sizes.
So we're being guided by two people from the MARS organization, which is the Mass Area Regional System Coordinators.
That's fine.
And they work on these agreements all the time.
Yeah.
So they're definitely guiding the
So
discussion.
you have to make the people in your town content with it.
Well, right. And I think it's important that everyone gets their voice. I mean, I think for sure, I don't want, in this case, Phillipston, as a resident, if I lived in Phillipston, I wouldn't want to feel steamrolled by whatever Templeton wants all the time.
No.
So there
Well-
needs to be a way, sort of a trip switch for Phillipston to be able to assert their rights as well, because even though they're a smaller
Sure.
portion of the district, it's still their district. It's still
Yeah.
their kids.
That's right.
So
But
these are
that's just what
discussions.
I've always heard.
Yeah,
And-
these are discussions we're having. I mean, the original agreement was written in 1955, and up
Oh,
until this point,
What's in?
every time it's been revised, it's simply been revised, tweaked, a little languaging. Like the old way of doing it was to have the name of the building in the document. So, the Templeton Center School, not the address, not anything else. So that's going away. It's just not done anymore. So we're finding that this agreement that our towns have been sort of sitting on for all this time really needs a complete overhaul. So that's what we're doing with them. And these are just discussions that are coming up. So
So that's what I've heard over the years.
Yeah.
And, I think if something's reasonable, I can't see one town rolling over the other but I suppose it happens.
well, and I
Yeah.
think a lot has to do with, there's a considerable amount of tension right now. So as a member of this committee, I try very hard to remember that we're coming at it from a citizen's point of view. And my point of view at the meeting is simply to speak for the financial interests of Templeton.
Yeah.
So I did bring up what you said about the district ignoring smaller repairs. And let's not forget that $5,000 for repairs in this day and age, that's nothing. That's probably not even a window.
Yeah.
So it would be very easy to go over that and then to place the burden on the town.
Good.
So that's actually the next thing we're looking at. So they're getting together numbers and figures so that we can look at past repairs for other buildings over time, even though I really feel like that's an apples and oranges story. We can't compare a repair in 2012 to Baldenville Elementary, which is no longer in use, to whatever might happen at the new Templeton Center School.
But
It's
in
not-
time-
it's not
in
even-
time things break, they fall
Yeah.
apart. they
For
need-
sure.
Fred Bennett used to spend a fortune putting ads in the paper to try to get the school department to fix something simple.
Yes. So
Yeah,
those
it-
things were discussed. Those
Well,
were
those
things that I brought up, and it's
bad-
just going to take
bad
multiple meetings
Yeah.
because, the Phillipston Board of Selectmen is now going to talk about that, as well as our Board of Selectmen hopefully will go over it. Their
Look at
FinCom.
the community, see how they do it, so that, you can see on a whole how they handle it, because it's gotta happen in other communities, not
Yeah,
everybody
well, those are the
can
things
buy.
that the gentleman from Mars really guide us on and give
Yeah.
really great examples of this is how it was done, in this regional school system. And they're very aware of systems that are comparable to ours with two towns. And then, it is unique because we do have a disproportionate composition. It is
Yeah.
mostly a Templeton school, but again, Phillipston is there
Yeah,
and
sure.
they want their representation as well. So,
But it's good you're doing this, at least you're not ignoring the problem, it's like having a rock in your shoe.
yeah, totally. it's
You
long
first need to
overdue. It's
do
supposed to be
this, yeah.
reevaluated, I think, every 5 years. and
Yeah,
it's not been looked at since
2004.
'04.
Yeah.
Well, and in 2004, it somehow didn't get to the state. So the state hasn't had any change in our documentation since the 70s.
Yeah.
And there was a version in the 90s, but I don't know what happened to that either. So anyway, that's it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
It's
good
interesting. I
girl.
think it's very interesting.
Yeah, good girl.
If I could,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Will.
I have to agree with the fact that it should be sharing between the two towns. They're attending our school. And let me just throw out a figure. $25,000 should be what the school at least pays for. And that's a very small percentage of the actual cost of the new school.
Well, there have been numbers tossed out, Will, and that was one of them. So again, we're really looking to the guidance of the Mars people. And we just need to come to a consent, like some sort of agreement. And then everyone listening needs to remember that this is just us coming together and pulling together a document. And it's not done until the towns agree with it and the school committee agrees with it. So there's a long way to go.
Oh, sure,
No,
but
no
if
matter what we put down for a figure, in the end, we as citizens are going to have to take it, end up giving them more money to the school to pay for whatever is the 25,000. Let's
Right.
face it. I mean,
Right.
it's a matter of fact here. But at least it should be a minimum of that, if not more. And I'm just giving you some direction. I don't know how the rest of the members feel, but I think that's at least a minimum that we should work from.
I agree.
All right, you want to have anything else for Amy on her committee report? Okay, Tony, did you have anything that committee's not doing anything at this point?
Nope, we're pretty much stood down for right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead. Yes.
I was wondering if you're going to go on to new business. I was wondering if we could end up taking out of order F, review the capital special article email from the TA, because that's later on, it's going to be coming up that we're going to be discussing that as part of the budget process. So I think we should move that up if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. I'll finish up with my committee report, and then when we go into new business, I can, if people don't have a problem with that, we can take that then.
Oh, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, no problem. Just a quick update from capital planning. We did have a meeting yesterday to discuss basically as an unexpected expense that came through from the DPW. They have a problem with their front end loader. They have a repair that would be needing to be, well, if I recall correctly, approximately $52,000 for repair on the transmission seal area. Bob was on at the meeting, answered questions about the request and the proposal that he had put forward, along with that with the town administrator. And recommendation of the capital planning yesterday was to put forward on a fall town meeting article to have the purchase of a new 2021 front end loader at the then current state bid price. That was the only other thing we've had going on with capital planning. And other than that, we have only met that. It was only a quick 20-minute meeting yesterday.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
was there any discussion about actually following the bylaw of having anything for capital of 10,000?
We did not discuss that in our meeting. I know the bylaw says anything 5 years or more and $10,000 has to go before capital planning. I don't have a copy of the bylaw in front of me, but I don't believe that it says that other things can't. I just think it says what has to. I could be wrong on that. I think that it draws the line on when you absolutely have to bring something forward to capital planning, but I don't think it has it listed anywhere of items that can't come before, which would be smaller items. As long as capital planning at the time doesn't see a issue with discussing it and doesn't feel overwhelmed with the additional items, I think it makes a lot of the expenses that much more transparent to the town to see them discussed. But I know without having the capital planning bylaw right here in front of me, I don't want to be 100% to that.
Of course, you know I have it.
Tom, I have a question for you.
Yes, go ahead, Tony.
When they discussed the fix, did they give an idea how long that fix would work, or did they get any of the details of, spending the $53K to fix a 2014 and how much more life you would get out of it versus buying a new one, which is going to cost another $120,000 on top of the 53?
I believe if I recall correctly, the repair was going to be warranted for 3 months. I don't believe it was any length on as far as the equipment goes, extending it any further than that, if I recall correctly.
Okay. And then did they look into what the value of this machine would be if it was made? I'm sure you don't get your 53 back, so that would probably be a moot point.
The concern was as it got further down the line, the trade-in value was going to go down, but that they didn't go into any further as far as the value as far as after the repair.
Okay, thanks.
If I might,
Yes, go ahead.
Tony, to answer your question from what I remember hearing, basically there was an $18,000 benefit if we compared to selling it as scrap for $20,000 by putting the $52,000 into it. I believe the selling price for a used unit had gone up to somewhere around 85 or 90. So there was a bump, but the fear was that during the process, you could easily wipe out that bump with extra cost or larger problems along the way. And then you still end up with a used piece of equipment and, the value is questionable.
So I think it sounds like you asked the question I was asking, Bob, and thanks for the information.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, if I can again.
Yes, go ahead, Will.
It does say in there about items to 10,000, but it says when purchasing bulk, the costs are more than 10,000. They can end up doing, but it would have to be multiple items to they can end up to 10,000. And we have a number of them that aren't that. The other thing is I'm rather confused here as to I looked at the bylaw, and one of the things, and I looked back and said, gee, I don't remember receiving anything from the Capital Committee to the advisory committee per se. I remember it going to the selectmen, but under the duties and authority is this section 5, and a copy of each report shall be filed with the town clerk and advisory committee. That's after talking about putting into the selectmen. I mean, that hasn't happened for a couple of years. I mean, that should have happened. The other thing I'm a little confused about is I looked and there was only 1 minute for me to look at, and it listed the treasurer collected as the clerk. But then when you go to the web page, it has Miss Graves as the clerk. What happened?
What happened with that is we had the initial minute meeting and we had a vacancy. At that point, Justice Graves, he stepped up and asked if he could be the recording secretary, and we said yes. The committee did not have an issue with that. Then they did since come up with a problem. Justice has resigned from the capital planning committee, so we do now have that vacancy again. I can certainly look into that part on the minutes, Will.
Yeah,
and
it's
Certainly
got me
send out the report to you. I wrote the report, so I know the report's completed, and I can certainly send that out to the advisory committee.
The other thing that confused me was I went on the capital planning webpage, and there's a tab that's the master capital plan. I didn't see any of the items that you guys sent out to the selectmen, and I actually had to go get the list out of the budget book. There hasn't been any updates since 2016. I mean, those are two things. The minutes, people are going to be looking for the minutes, and they're going to be looking for what the master capital plan is how we're working against that. If you put out a plan, you should update it. I mean, I'm not faulting you guys for what you did, but some of that should have been put in the master plan as part of the overall master plan, so that people could see what's going on before it actually went to put into the budget book.
So I think the problem you have with a master plan like that, Will, is say you do one this year and it's meant to be like a 5-year plan. Next year, there may be only one member on capital planning that was on it the year before, and they may not agree with everything that's on there. We should get the reports for each year what they go through, but I'm not sure a master plan is an effective tool when you have such turnover in the committee.
Well, we ended up, I was on when we had the master plan, and over the course of every year, things got put on and things got taken off because we went back to the same departments and said, this is what you put in last year. And is that still a priority for you, or you still a wish? And that's how it was done. That they can end up saying that new committee members come on, they can do the same thing as saying, hey, this is on the master plan. Do you still have a wish for that? So that's not, to me, that's not an issue that is mute as far as having a master plan. At least people can see what we have actually thrown out there for a master plan over a period of time, and what people thought at the time that they needed.
Anyone have anything else on the capital planning update?
No, but before you move on, there's a comment in the YouTube comments. Deb's not here, so I was just trying to watch. And they're always a little delayed. So it goes back to the RAAC conversation. And Mike Curry is watching, and he said, we need to be equitable to our children, but be realistic to our town's resources. And I just responded to him that I agreed with that. So I'll keep you, if there's other comments, I'll try and be a little more timely.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
Tom, if I might just quickly, I think
Yep.
In regards to capital, we have a question that has come up that needs to be answered first, whether or not we're going to follow the bylaw or the financial management plan, because I believe one says we have a capital planning committee and the other says we have a capital improvement committee. And those two have different goals and objectives. So until we determine which one we actually want or have, we probably don't really need to discuss much on it, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have new business. Will it ask to move the capital special articles email up? Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay. This had been sent out back in February. Adam had gone through the capital items he had put forward to the Board of Selectmen. The Article 19 is listed as FY22 capital budget, rolling stock, improvements, and special articles. He did go through and put the items on that they were putting going forward. I think this article is a combination of articles 21, 29. Willie, you had wanted to discuss this if you want to take over now, what you wanted to talk about it.
He's muted.
Will, you out there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was muted. So the reason I brought this up was some of them, again, if you look at them, we're on under the 10,000, and they really should be part of the department that wants them under their budget per se, instead of on the capital plan. I mean, if you look at other communities, that's the way it's done per se. And I mean, we have on the upcoming budget, there's only, and I say only, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, all in one department that could be put on that particular department's budget, rather than on the capital plan. And it's all under 10,000. There's one, I think there's one that's 3,500, 5,500. You know, those are small figures, and I would think that a department head could put that on their budget as an item that would come out of their budget per se.
One thing I think about doing it this way, Will, and I know how you feel about the 10,000 and how it's going like that. I think listing the smaller ones does make for a more transparent bringing it forward to the town than it does just burying it in somebody's operational budget. I think that, especially when it's an item that, people, they want to see, they want to see the street sign replacement program going forward, and items like that. It may be less than the $10,000, but I think that in times where we're trying to make sure as a community that the budget and the presentations are more transparent, I don't see where it's bad to show the people, I guess, because if you put it in the department head's budget and just write it in, it can very easily be, buried in the budget, and then it doesn't get spent on street sign replacement. It gets, spent on something else. I'm just using that for an example.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from with trying to make sure that it, falls under the right section, but I don't see it being harmful this way either, I guess.
I mean, the memo was actually for articles on June 17 of 2020, which would be last year. You said, I think you said 21. Well, yes, it would be on 21 budget per se. I'm sorry.
Yes, those are just the examples that he had put out to show how they were listed last year. I think it's Article 19 on this year's.
Yeah.
If I might, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
I've been on capital planning before, and when I was on with Doug Morrison back, I think in 17, 18, something like that. And I remember the discussion regarding dropping the, let's say, 10,000 or utilizing 5,000. And at the time anyway, and I don't know if that's changed, but at the time we were doing that because, as you know, we had just come out of, the 4 years without, budgets and free cash and this and that and the whole bit and a mess. And we hadn't really had, a budget to deal with. So things were getting delayed and items were staying on the master plan for an extended period of time. So we were finding that, items that were just on the regular budget were coming forward, and now they were $11,000 and $13,000 that, had been when they were put on at, 6 or 7 or whatever. So it was just a way to try to, plan better by having kind of a loaded lower end, see what's going to come up and bump that $10,000 maybe next year with the price increase. So that was how that was talked about at that time. So maybe, and I believe for that purpose, it has merit, because I think for the planning and the process, you'd want to know those things. And I think that would also satisfy Tom's thought about, bringing them forward before the public so that they'd be aware of them and hear of them, not just buried in a budget. But the bylaw does say 10,000. So maybe we just got to clarify that, okay, these things come before capital to fulfill the bylaw by coming before capital, before being funded and appropriations being made. But not that we're approving any of the items through capital under $10,000. Those still, let's say, have been brought before capital, but don't go through the same process maybe. Just a thought on my end.
Mr. Chairman, and I have to agree with Bob. That was a discussion that was held on 2016, again, with Doug. And we had that discussion about reducing the amount from 10,000 to 5,000 if we were going to continue to take those and not put them in the budget. He actually put it in, and I thought he was going to address that with the selectmen. He actually put it, and if you can end up checking, because it's in the minutes for that particular organization at that time, he did put in there about accepting items on the capital plan for 5,000. And that actually went to the selectmen at that particular time. I think it was his roll up of all the capital items for that year, and talked about the fact of having 5,000. So I mean, in order to not, if people see us having a bylaw and not abiding it is not good. That's why I keep saying it. If it's there, we should uphold it. If not, and we need to take and end up changing it because we want to do business a little different and not put it into a department, then we need to take and end up changing the bylaw.
I think
go ahead, Tony.
Thanks. I think part of the problem you have, though, Will, is the same people that would say we're not following a bylaw will see a brand new mower in the highway department and say, I don't remember approving that. I think when you have stuff like that's on this list, for the most part, having something tangible that the people at town meeting can vote for is important, that they know, okay, we're buying a new mower. So maybe they're looking out for it. We're buying X, Y, and Z, so they can look out for it. I understand what the bylaw says, but people in this town want transparency. So if someone's going to buy something new, they want to know about it and they want the ability to vote on it. And I think that that's what this allows us to do. Maybe the bylaw should be changed.
It would be transparent, Tony, by having it as 5,000 and it shows up on there.
I don't know why you're yelling at me. I said maybe the bylaw needs to be changed.
Oh, okay.
They're also listed as special articles, Will. It's got nothing to do with as far as going forward, a special article can be these items. I also don't think the bylaw says, unless you can read it to me where it says it can't be below 10,000. I'm pretty sure that anything can go forward. And, I think that trying to move forward with it, that's why the capital, planning committee put forward the recommendations. Some of them were, some weren't.
Well, in today's budget, that maybe that number needs to be lowered so they can put things in there that their budget could absorb. Sometimes there's things in there that they need to go to capital planning for.
Tom, I've got some comments in the YouTube thread.
Okay.
Mike Curry initially said the TA explained that they include the under $10,000 as special articles for funding use of specific funds. And then he was following along, so I was trying to like poke in, but I don't want to interrupt. And then he said, Tom and Will, it's the way the budget is being presented, but Capcom considerations are paramount. Bob is speaking now. Doug was very good at capital. And he says he agrees with Will and Jeff Bennett about how it appears. And then he said, yes, Tony, special articles.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to say something. I'm going to get myself in trouble.
No, well,
I don't think that the chairman of the Board of Selection should be commenting on our meeting. I'm sorry, Mike, I mean that with all the respect for you, but I don't want people to give the appearance when you make comments, and it's usually really good information for us, that you're influencing what we're doing. I don't think that's the right optic. I don't think that's what you're trying to do, but I think it's a bad optic. That's just my personal opinion. I think, Mike, you're a smart guy and you got a lot of great things for this town, but we have to be independent. So having the chairman of the Board of Selectmen commenting on our meeting may give people the impression that you're trying to sway us one way or another.
To some point, Tony, I have to agree with you, is if he can end up asking questions, but to take an input to it and agree or disagree with the members is probably not the right thing to do as selectmen, because some people will take that as that's the select board's voice, and that's what the select board's wishes when the select board has not voted on that per se.
Or yeah, I don't, like I said, I know Mike, I don't think he's saying anything
no, you can't
malicious
be
or
quiet.
meaning anything by it. It's just a bad optic.
Okay, my idea, capital planning, is basically for the big items that the town is gonna have to expend a lot of money for. And for many years, we did projects, huge ones, without them ever seeing the light of the capital planning. That's what the biggest reason capital planning should exist. We did a water tower, we did a pumping station, we did like all at one time. We didn't even have a bond rating. So that's basically what your capital plan is for, the large items. And Tony, you're right, people want transparency. I don't want to vote for something and find out they never bought it. That does not make me a happy lady. When a truck body never came and the one they have got a hole in it. So, that's kind of it. But over 10,000, they absolutely should be on. And you can piss and moan about the smaller ones, but it is what it is. But they should be getting grants for some of this stuff. Other communities been getting grants and we haven't been doing too well like that. So that would help a lot, because I'm telling you, I hope I'm wrong, but the next couple of years are gonna be really, really, really tough. And we're gonna be sucking seaweed.
I don't like seaweed.
Well, stay out of the ocean.
So I do have some more comments on the YouTube
Oh, naturally.
from Mr. Curry. I'm just reading it. It says, okay, thanks, Tony, but who else is watching and commenting? This is a public meeting. If you guys speak at select board meetings, I repeat, I know who you are and don't discriminate. And he says, forgive me for being engaged in a public meeting. I'm just reading the comments.
I know, Mike.
Never let anybody have the last word. Stay in your own lane.
It's okay. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as you're the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Most people know that. And
You have your meeting.
again, I don't think you're trying to be malicious or to guide us or do any of that stuff. I just think it's a bad optic.
I mean, he is invited to these meetings, correct? he could be on the Zoom with us? Or no?
Fine.
No, he shouldn't be.
I mean, but if we were in person, he could attend. He could sit there and attend.
He could.
So why could he, is the YouTube the version of that? Sorry to interrupt the discussion.
He's-
It's
he's
just like
not,
mechanics.
But he's not really commenting. He's providing information, or he's not asking a question of the board. He's providing information to something that we're talking about, as a member of the select board would know.
Absolutely. You're right. If
Might I-
you're a chairman, you are supposed to present the agenda. You are not supposed to influence your whole board. You can have a discussion about it, but you can't sit there and tell everybody how they ought to vote in a roundabout way. And he.
Well, I don't think he's trying to do that,
No,
Bev.
But that's how it comes across.
Right. I
And
think,
I don't want an hour meeting ending up being 3.
right.
Tom, you're muted.
Let's move on with the agenda then, and we won't have the 3-hour meeting, hopefully.
Good boy.
Where, anybody else have anything else on the capital planning email? All right. Next, going down, new business, we have upcoming meeting dates and times. Willett wanted to bring up meeting quite a few times more prior to the budget workshop. Will, I'll let you kind of go into what you were looking for at this point. I do have a different take on it, so I'm certainly will let you go first.
The reason I brought that up is multiple meetings is that on the 13th, we should have at least, as an organization, look through the entire budget. Now, when I say look through it, there's different ways to looking at it. We can end up looking at the budget and saying, okay, and looking back at past years, what was an acceptable level of somebody to use their budget? If they had only 70% of their budget, did we give them too much over multiple years? That's one way, and then talk about that and make questions for that. In addition to that, there's another way that they can end up doing that, and I saw this in a couple of the budgets in 20 and 19 and 20, where there was large, even though it was over 90%, there was a large amount of money left in a couple of departments' budgets. Why? That's money that could have been used for something else. They could have, and one particular aspect is, instead of having it in the salaries per se, like for this department, and it was over $30,000, equipment could have been bought. I mean, those are the type of discussions I think we should have going through the budget, and then ask those questions on Saturday. And I don't think you can end up doing and giving it justice in one night. I mean, we're going to get into the budgets, and I don't think you can end up doing it justice by one night. It would take a couple of nights maybe, because I don't think anybody wants to end up being here for 3 or 4 hours to go through a budget on one night. That they can break it up, to me, would be a little bit better. That's where I was coming from.
My opinion on some of that, Will, is I think we'd be looking at things that, if we haven't even heard the budget presentations from the department heads yet, trying to review their budget they may address it in their presentation, and we've wasted a lot of time. I think that if we do it individually, and we've had the budget book, we've got it electronically. Some of us have it in hard copy if they wanted. And I think we were able to do that. That's why this past year we went over the end of the year budget versus actuals, and we sent emails to some of the different departments with some questions. And I think if we continue to do that at the end of each year and address it, then we'll be able to see that they're overspending in one area or not budgeting enough or budgeting too much. I think to go through line by line of every item, it's not for lack of putting a better way. It's not really our job to create the budget. It is our job to make sure that we're not overspending in the town, and that we're protecting the financial interests of the town. But I think that to go line by line prior to budget presentations even being done, I think is really a redundant fact, because if something changed at the budget hearing, we're kind of sitting there saying, well, that was a kind of a waste of time.
Well, let me just say this, Mr. Chairman. We're not making the budget. The budget's already there. It's looking at the budget and making our recommendation on a particular item is the thing that this committee is supposed to do. That's our job, is to take a look at any expenditures and make recommendations either up or down. I see some areas in the budget that are underfunded and that should be up. I see some others that over the course of all the departments seems to be always having money, 1,000 here, 1,000 there, on at least two accounts in multiple departments, that there's always extra money the last couple of years. Why not end up putting it into other areas where it can be used? Taking that money and put it into end up some of these items that are under 10,000 and putting it on a department's budget and having them up their budget is, to me, is the right thing to do. And that's how I see it. Maybe you think that we're making a budget. We're not making a budget. The budget's already there. It's our recommendation, either up or down.
So
Either
Will,
agree with it or not agree with it.
so Will, the first comment you made before Tom did is it leads to my argument for a spend plan from each department. I've been advocating that since I've been on the board. If you have a spend plan, then you understand what they're spending it on. But I also agree with Tom that a week from Saturday, we'll have our opportunities to ask the questions that we individually want to ask. Then we'll come together as a board and discuss that meeting of the budget, and what questions we have. And, we'll have time, but do we think we should at least ask more questions to see if an adjustment is warranted? I mean, you always say that can you give some examples of where you think something's underfunded? But when you give the example, give why, or overfunded, but what department and why? Because without talking to the budget heads, just because they have a line item X, Y, and Z, when we talk to them is when they go into detail. Okay, all this stuff is in there. I remember 2 years ago doing this, and I had asked Mark Machete from Templeton, the water department, about something, and why their budget for one thing was higher than everybody's else. And he got back to me, and it made me understand why it was such. And I think it was maybe for supplies or something. I forget what it was, but I got the explanation I needed. So, okay, I had a question on that. They explained to me why.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Aye. Okay. So, I've heard this discussion, and I have an opinion on it. I would absolutely love to do a budget similar to what Mr. Spring is suggesting. The only problem is we're not set up to do that, because our financial management policy requires our administration to float 5% of our budget within the budget. So we have, at any given point in the last couple of years, because we're floating around a $10 million town budget, we have about $500,000 built into the accounts from page 1 through 4 in the BVA. And, I've had this discussion that, there's 4 or 5 accounts that carry the majority of the funds. And, let's say insurance and benefits was a carrier of about half. Those things have been adjusted. If you look at this present budget, they're already lower than they were before. I think doing what Mr. Springs suggests now with the way we presently formulate and manage our budget would be detrimental because it's cutting from both, it's cutting from both ends. You're cutting money because it's there or utilizing it for something else and removing it from your free cash next year, which is your capital for next year, which also utilizes 20% rollover from this year into next year. So you have to look at the big picture and not the small picture and start chopping. The big picture is, where you can look at a direction. And I think there are plenty of individual items within the budget that we should be looking at and saying whether we think they are beneficial for the taxpayers in the form that they are being delivered by our administration. I think that's an absolute just thing and what we should be doing, because I don't think in some regards, taxpayers are getting value for their dollar. In others, I think they very much are. But, I have quite a bit of information that I've garnered in my research and reviews and information, and I would not venture to go into any account and just cut money with the knowledge that I have right now, because I don't know if that money is designed for free cash or what its future purpose is, because we have it in the financial management policy that it's built in. So I think we have a lot of work we can do. I just don't think that's it at present. I would really like it. And as we've talked about in the past, I would really like to be able to do it as Mr. Springs suggested. But to do that, we'd have to carry our free cash carryover in, like we've talked in the past, in the town reserve, so that it was isolated. And then you knew that your budgets were trim and you had your extra cash over here. It wasn't built into the pool. Anyway, that's enough. I just wanted to add my 2 cents.
I have to agree with you, Bob. That's the way that most communities do that, is their emergency reserve is a much higher number. Budgets are a little bit tighter, per se. And and that extra money that's banging around in the budgets really should be an emergency reserve, or it should be allocated in a different way within the budget. You can look at a lot of other communities' budgets, and that's basically how it's done. If it was still in the emergency reserve and it wasn't used, it still goes to free cash. And that's how a lot of towns address that. It makes the department heads work to a little tighter budget, but if they do end up having unbudgeted, unanticipated expenses, then they have the emergency reserve to go to.
Let's continue this conversation in the budget area. Right now, we're just kind of going over setting up some meeting dates and that we've kind of drifted. Go ahead, Amy.
There's some comments in the YouTube again. One is Mr. Curry stating that he, just to generalize, is going to continue to participate as a community member because of COVID, and that he doesn't wish to disrupt our meeting. And then Liz Toth commented, Tony, if a department over or under budgets the same items every year, then that needs to be discussed and that department needs to better sharpen their pencils. And then Mike just commented again, and he said, Bob, you get that pass and ability on the Saturday meeting. That's a meeting that can change the budget.
So I will address, the comment was addressed to me. I don't disagree with that, but there is a set procedure we do in this town for that. And that's how I choose to do it. how I choose to look at the budget and ask the questions I ask, and how you do, Amy, or Tom, or Bev, or Will, or Bob, or Deb. We all have different ways of looking at the budget. We come from different angles. We come from different experiences. And I think it's important. And that's the nice thing of having such an eclectic group, that we bring a lot of different views into the budget.
Can I say something?
Of course.
You know, when we had the line item budget, I have a whole stack of them. And they were all done. It was the same budget, but there were changes. There were like 20 changes in a week and a half, because Michael was trying to hide some money, and he was having an awful hard time doing it. The way we used to do the budget and the way we're doing it now is totally different. Maybe we need a meeting after budget season to discuss and come to a consensus on what kind of budget we want to have. I think Adam's worked real hard to present the budget that we have now. What we have, we have. There are things that I don't particularly care for, and I think we can discuss. I think what Will's talking about is what we used to do, and you almost can't do it. I think Bob's right, because of the way the budget is done. Whether it's right or wrong, it is what it is. We have to live with it. You know?
Mr.
And
Chairman,
Does anyone else have anything on meeting dates?
we
Let's
should
try to
have a-
stick to the agenda.
We should have a meeting after that big meeting and sit down and discuss things.
We have a
Chair-
meeting scheduled on the 18th.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
can,
go ahead.
just
Go ahead, Will.
one final comment.
On dates?
No, well, it has to take and end up doing with the budgets and how they're done. per
Well,
se.
let's do that in the budget section. So we have a budget section to talk about here. Let's try to stick to the agenda so that we can kind of get it done.
Okay, because something came up about how the budgets are done, and I wanted to address that.
Yep, no, we'll do that when we get to the budget section, in case someone's watching and waiting for that section to start putting on the television. We currently have meetings scheduled for the 13th, which is the all-day that workshop, the budget workshop. And we have one scheduled right after that, the 18th, Bev, which would be the one that you were just talking about addressing in that.
Tom, I believe there's also one on the 15th for the school departments, both Monty Tech and NRSD present their budgets. I think it's the 15th.
Yes, it is. What I'd like to also do is, as we're going forward, the final budget recommendations need to be to us according to the calendar of schedules by April 7th, which would be the final town meeting warrant and the budget. I'd like to make sure this year that we schedule in our pre-town meeting for enough time to get stuff into the voter's guide that they publish. That does give us almost a month, or at least 3 weeks in between there, also to continue to discuss whether we agree or disagree with the budget dates, and that's just following our current meeting schedule. If we agree with the budget and how it's set up. So I mean, at this point, unless somebody wants to add things in, I think our meetings are falling into play nicely with how the budget workshop is coming, and then being able to meet right after that. And then we can see where we go with information we gather at the budget workshop on the 13th, and move from there, in my opinion. Does anyone else have any the questions on the current dates that we have coming up?
You may need some more additional dates after the Saturday meeting to take and discuss the budget.
And we may, and that's something that when we're on the 18th, when we meet, we can discuss. Like we said, everybody may have individual questions. They may be answered at the budget workshop by the department heads, or they may be to discuss amongst the group, or somebody may have no questions. As Tony pointed out, we all view the budget differently and how different things. That's why we're on a board like this and able to put together the different information. So All right, next on the agenda, we have, I know Bob, you had brought up to discuss the Narragansett Regional, the presentation that they sent out. I'd also sent out an email I received today with the certifying the assessments voted last night at the school committee meeting. That was sent on to us along with the district income sheet for FY22. So, Bob, if you wanted to, I know you said you wanted to bring this up.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I wanted to bring this up basically because it is very concerning to me. This is a budget killer. You know, we tried, I think it was a year ago or so, 2 budgets ago, maybe now, to put together an ad hoc to try and talk about getting the school to cooperate. We were told over and over that it was happening. I'm looking at a budget here being proposed of $20,245,531, out of which $807,748 is one-time grant money. You know, we literally have a budget that is barely increasing over last year, or actually is decreasing. Well, I'll go back, getting lost here. But I'll go this way. Last year, our budget was $19,729,000, and the school used $500,000 worth of E&D money in there. So our portion was $19,229,000. This year, with the $800,000 that they're using, the actual revenues that they're taking in are $19,437,783. It's $207,000 more than last year, but yet, if you look at just this number, the town's additional expenditure, the town's additional expenditure for Templeton is $233,000, and Phillipston is $50,000. The breakdown when you go after the, oh no, it's, sorry, I'm losing my place here because I'm going between 3 pages in this line. So yeah, what NRSD is proposing is funding $327,265 by using an additional $307,000 of one-time funding over last year. This whole budget increase is one-time funding. And it's setting us that 139,403 that they're using as the ESSER grants, the ESSR2 grants. That amounts to a 2% increase on next year's budget already, because that's a one-time unexpended, or whatever, one-time fund. You know, 5.4% increase is what we're really looking at on the town share. When the objective going in, that I was told anyway, that the school was informed that they had 2.5%. I don't know when we're going to hold them to it. But we passed this. What are we going to do next year? Last year was close the school and add 250,000. This year it's $800,000 in grants and $300,000 in extra cash. You know, what's next year? Mass Millions tickets?
Now, the numbers that you're taking, Bob, are you taking those off the budget presentation or the income sheet that they sent out that the school that was approved last night?
The presentation, because the numbers from last night, they had to move the ESSER money back onto the town share. So the town share on the presentation, or the total budget on the presentation, was 20,057,186, because that's not including the 188,435 or whatever for the ESSER grant. Which brings it to
numbers you were going forward with.
Yeah. And then kind of creating my own. But I just, you know, and then the other thing, you know, you hear, and in the presentation, and please don't take me wrong, I'm not saying that anybody's doing anything unethical or anything like that, but you hear the school doing the presentation, and I heard them say more than once that we're using all our E&D funds. Well, they need to specify that they're using all their E&D funds that they got certified in fiscal year 20. Because if anybody wants to, they can go look at page 15 of the presentation under their excess and deficiencies. And they show their certified amount from FY12 and their expenditures. And if you add and subtract, there's a 439,700 and change difference. So they still have $439,000 in E&D funds left over, no matter how you slice it. So, you know, I just really am concerned, because I don't want to hear, oh, well, they'll get it next year again, because I'm done. And that's really all I have, unless anybody has any questions. So I got answers. I'm just get so frustrated with this that I lose my track.
Mr. Chairman.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying that with the extra money they got from CARES or wherever it was, they're using that in their budget. If they include that next year in our assessment, we're going to get clobbered. We have a pandemic. There are people in our town that are at the food pantries. It will kill us. I don't know what earth they are coming from, because as for years and years and years, they take more than their share, and the town gets hurt so bad. Until we have some real revenue coming in from a business or something, because new growth gets sucked up by the school, because most of those people are children. So I understand what he's saying. Oh, if they want to use this one-time fund, fine, but don't use that to base our assessment next year, because it'll just eat us alive. Really will.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, Will.
We got an email from Miss Varney, and it's and it actually says on here, I am certifying the assessment voted by the school committee on the 3rd.
Yeah.
If you look at that, that number, we are in deep trouble here, folks. They want $373,333. And what is on the actual budget town administrator has is 228,000 plus. So the town right now, if we accept the school budget, we will have to make a cuts in the budget of $145,225. What are we going to cut?
It happens all the time. I'm so sick of it. I don't want to go through another town meeting like last year. That was horrible. But that's what's going to happen.
So we're in trouble already. Just getting this certified budget. We're going to get a copy from the treasurer, which we're supposed to do, but she's given us a heads up, and we already are down monies from for what's allocated in the budget, folks.
And
I'd love to know how many people in town are working. How many people have jobs? I'd love to know where we stand as a community. A lot of the younger people can work remotely, but it's the people that worked in stores and had jobs that you had to have hands-on. Some of them aren't ever going to go back to work. I don't know what's going to happen. So it's
Mr.
not just the town. If we get money from the government, we'll be all right.
I mean, that's a good point, but remember,
Right.
we're a services-based town, and unfortunately, during a pandemic, services probably go up versus down. But that's fortunately why they have that CARES Act money that I know Adam has put in for. I know the town, the school district has put in for money and probably been reimbursed some. I don't know how you can't really count this as a normal year, but
No,
you have to still
it
understand.
happens every year anyway. It's only going to be worse because if they base our assessment on that extra money they're using. Will says we're in trouble now as it is. Go ahead, Bob.
yeah, I was going to say, if I might, the other thing about this budget that kind of concerns me and wasn't explained to my liking anyway was the transportation portion of it. Because my understanding is last year when they closed Phillipston Memorial, we started transporting all of Phillipston children from Phillipston to Templeton schools. And what I heard Ms. Geister say, I believe it was last night, was that the reason that our transportation was cut was because we didn't utilize it this year. And it's based off the previous year in some fashion. But the thing you'll notice if you look at it is that Templeton's increase is significantly higher than Phillipston's increase, which seems odd being that all of Phillipston's children are transported, seemingly.
Yeah, but does transportation part of the regional agreement where they only pay whatever is it 15-18%? So even if they use more, are they still only paying at that percentage?
It seems to be broken out here, Tony. I don't know. That might very well be it, but
Okay.
their percentage went up less than ours, so it wouldn't be the same number.
Okay.
They may be able to also, Bob, put more students on a actual full-size bus versus if there's students with certain IEPs or certain plans that they have to have one
Very well
could make a difference too.
I would also say that remember that the school committee hasn't, or not the school committee, but the regional, Dr. Cassavant hasn't presented their budget to the Board of Selectmen nor us. That's going to happen on, I believe, the 15th. So
Yes.
that's where, Bob, a lot of your questions hopefully would be answered. I know Bob, I think you were weren't you at that meeting a couple of years ago when we went to Dr. Cassavant's office, and my head was swimming.
Tony. It was me
I'm
and you
sorry.
from advisory.
Right, and my head was swimming with all those different numbers. trying to make heads or tails of it.
That's the plan.
Another comment in the YouTube, if I might. Mr. Curry said, by the way, last night's NRSD presentation was a hearing and completely open to inspection and question, which is why I participated.
Well, what we received was a certified copy, and we will get it in the mail, a certified copy from the treasurer. That is the budget, period.
Yes.
They
that-
can make
that-
a budget presentation, but that's the budget.
if they voted on it, then that's the budget. And
That's what I just said, Tony. They voted on it. It's certified from Bonnie, and we're gonna get our copy by
right.
law, but from the treasurer.
Right, and we always have gotten the copies. I credit Sue for getting us that information before our meeting.
But, it's really, here we go again.
But Bev, in fairness, and I understand where you're coming from, there's probably some people out there saying we should give the school more.
From where?
Well, that's not the issue.
No. Oh, yes, there is an issue.
Well, no. What I mean
We have
is,
this, we have this.
what I mean is,
Not
there's
give them this.
no. I know that. What I'm saying is that there are people that believe we could cut other things and it should go to the school, where some people believe we should cut from the school to go other things. It's just people look at things in a completely different perspective. We all don't look at it the same way.
But the reality is that we have had to lay the town workers off so many times because we don't have the revenue to float the boat.
I know, and the school laid people off, and
We do have to look at the fact that the school is a separate entity from the town. The school is a district.
Yep.
It's just like another town or entity legally. It's, we don't control them, they don't control us. And basically the biggest interaction we have is getting a bill this time of year.
Well, and I think it goes, hopefully the Board of Selectmen and the TA are giving them guidance on what we can afford, and I'm sure they are. There's just not a good answer.
As one of our past superintendents had ended up indicating when she was on, she said those folks that have all the money in Templeton and have big salaries should and they want schools that they can end up being well funded. They should contribute more, way above and beyond their tax rate.
I disagree with that.
All right, anybody have anything else on the presentation?
Nope.
All right, next up on the agenda is the weekly report. The last one that we had that I'd sent out was the February 25th one. Know if anyone had a chance, has anything they'd like to bring up about that. I know Will had brought up about having more departments actually putting things in. Looking at this one, that's maybe they were listening because it seems to have been improved.
Jackie's working on some information to give new homeowners to help them with resources so they'll know to watch meetings on TCTV and let them know the things they need to know to live in the community. I think that's going to be a big help. She's done a lot. She's done an incredible job for us, way above and beyond.
Bev, if you talk to her, make sure she adds the website munihelps.org.
Okay.
Munihelps.org. A lot of people may not know this, but so National Grid, you see the commercials on there where you can get energy audits and stuff, but you have to be National Grid or Eversource. But for towns like Templeton, and there's a good 25 towns that have a similar setup like we do, there's munihelps.org. And you can get some rebates for different things, an energy efficient refrigerator, a Wi-Fi thermostat, a new washing machine. You can get, it's not as much as like National Grid or that site gives, but it's a little something that you can get back that the town people should know about.
Okay, I'll look
Substantially
at-
less.
It's something.
It's something,
Right,
yeah.
right. It's substantially less.
And we
but
pay
that's at least something.
substantially less for our electricity than those other people do too.
Much
So
less.
there's a trade-off.
One other comment to go along with Bev's in that weekly report. Your community service director must have been watching our meeting when Bev and I both said about having a booklet for new people in town. I have to give that person kudos. It was again in this week's a weekly report. She ended up saying she was continuing to work on it. I would like to end up having her present that to us if she can for inputs, or maybe to the selectman or somebody for individually or jointly. I mean, I think she's taken the bull by the horns, and I think we need to recognize that she's doing a good job for the community by establishing that booklet for new townspeople.
Okay.
Anyone have anything else on the weekly report? All right, next on the agenda was the most recent budget versus actual. I did miss when I sent it out, so I sent one out today. However, as it turns out, I think all of you have had a more recent one than I do in your possession. It's in the budget book. That's when I looked at it, is current through February 20th. So it's actually newer than the one that I sent out today to you all. As far as the budget versus actual, does anyone have any comments on it at this point?
The only comment I have on it is that I looked at this, and I know Tony's going to say about spend plan, but when you look at even salaries at this particular point in January, we should see salaries around the 58 to 59%, and a lot of those there are some in the 45-47% range. So I mean, it doesn't look like this is up to date per se. I don't know about the 20th one.
I do like to point out, well, the one thing with the salaries at this point, again, I believe this budget was pretty much formulated at the very beginning of COVID. So some of these salaries could be a result of things not being opened at this point or not being expended at certain amounts or some of that. So I think we're going to have a year of, as we look at the end of this fiscal year, when we end up reviewing the final budget versus actual, where kind of like last year's, there was some things that were left over because they weren't spent because of COVID. I anticipate we're going to have that same style of, unfortunately, the budget being off a little bit just because that's just the way of life at this point. Hopefully we'll, as the budgets go forward and this year's budget's formulated, that next fiscal year will have some more normalcy for the community, but that doesn't mean that next year's budgets aren't going to be a little, screwy too. I think it's going to take a couple of years before they actually start being accurate again. And I think if we do our part and keep encouraging the town departments to be as accurate as they can with them, I think it's going to keep moving forward.
Just a couple comments in the YouTube again. Liz Toth said, Tom, the pie is only so big. Comment was made 2 minutes ago, which feels like a lifetime ago now. And Mike Curry says, agreed, Will, kind of like a citizens academy. I fully support that. That's awesome. Jackie is a community gem.
Anyone have anything else on the budget versus actual at this time? All right, next was FY22 budget. Review the process and prepare for the department presentations. We kind of morphed into this earlier when we were talking about dates. Will, I know you said you had something that you wanted to bring up, and I kind of brought us back to the agenda. So at this point, I'd like to give you your opportunity to bring up what you want to discuss.
Well, as it was pointed out by one of our selectmen, he's put out a number of things, and I checked into it. There's a Mass General law that basically says that the only people that can change the format of the budget is an annual town meeting. This was presented to the annual town meeting by our past interim administrator. It wasn't passed to and voted on by the town to take and change to an omnibus budget. And that's something that if you go back to 17, it was a line item budget, but it also had it rolled up. So it gave us the best of two worlds, and people got to see the line items as well as the upper level. And if everybody had that sheet, they could actually see that. When this administrator came on, that the townspeople did not get to take an in-depth voting on going to an omnibus budget, and that needs to take an in-depth point being pointed out to all the townsfolk. This is a budget process that you didn't vote for. Do you want it?
Absolutely. I don't want people to go to a town meeting again where they don't know what they're voting for. The last town meeting was the worst town meeting I've ever been to. People won't come. There has to be more honesty. You have to, if you want something, you ask for it. And you have to have a budget that makes sense so that people know what they're voting for.
You talk about transparency. This omnibus budget, and I hear the selectmen and other folks talking about transparency. This is not transparency. They got all they'd see at the annual town meeting is the omnibus budget and not what's in it. And I don't want to hear about, well, hey, listen, they have a chance to go on the website and see the budget book. Well, the budget book changed from then to the town meeting, number one. Number two is that there's a lot of folks that don't have computers and are not even aware that the budget is on the town website.
Maybe that's something that they can also put in the booklet that they're looking to put out to new residents too. Link to the how to get to the budget book and that, so people can. I think most people, at least at this point, have some type of a internet device that they could use as far as that goes. What's that?
A lot of older people still don't.
I know a number of elderly that don't have access to a computer, that they can see that.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have
I just, but if you wanted to do a line item budget and approve it at town meeting will last 3 weeks.
No, it doesn't. That's
It
not
will.
true.
It
We have
will.
done it many times. We would roll through it. If someone wanted to ask a question, they'd say halt. That's absolutely, positively not true. They have dummied down the budget. They have dummied down town meeting. You wonder why people don't go. My husband got up and walked out the door.
I
He
don't
said,
know why
"I'm
people
not gonna
don't go.
stay here."
I don't know why people don't go.
Because he said, I'm not sitting here and I can't figure out even what I'm voting for.
No, I mean, that's your husband, but like, I mean, we have a lot of other people in town, and what's their motivation for not going? I don't know.
I think a lot of it is that there hasn't been a lot of honesty. Things have not been good for a long time.
I think a lot of it is too, it took 3 or 4 nights to get a town meeting completed because it was so long.
Not always, once in a while.
That's because we had so many warrant articles. That stopped. I have to disagree with you, Tony. And going through a line item budget, and I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating that people need to take and end up voting on this particular budget process from a line item. And it didn't take that much longer. as Bev said, I remember going through it. It took a very short time. You end up having to go through that each and every thing in the budget. And if somebody had a disagreement, they'd say hold. So you'd have 2 or 3 holds. You'd have the discussions up and down, and then you'd vote on the budget. It went fairly quickly. It didn't take 2 or 3 days to take and go through. I'm sorry to disagree with you, but that's how it
Well,
was.
you
But
disagree with
people
me all
should
you want. I
have
don't
the
care.
opportunity to decide what they want.
I just think about it differently. That's all.
Well, how long have you lived here?
Go ahead, Amy. You see your hand going up, trying to get the word in edgewise.
Couple of comments in the YouTube. Liz Toth says that there needs to be transparency in the budget. And then she states, Tom, it's a generational issue. Some elderly have challenges getting the information.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Beverly, how long should I have lived here before I can comment?
Well, if you've lived here long enough, you know that.
What's
in
long enough?
3 more years, Tony.
40 years.
40 years?
Yeah, then you know that we've had problems for a good long time.
There's been problems in the 20 years I've lived here. I don't doubt that. But
The good news is we're in better financial shape now than we were. So that's going in the right direction.
But the
Yep.
good news is we have to stay there. That's the thing.
well,
You can't take a nosedive.
I mean, if you look at
It's
the
very hard to stay put.
right, but if you look at the overall budget increase from this year to last year, it's, I think, 0.0054%. It's less, it's just a little over 1/2 of 1%.
Yep,
I think that's pretty good.
You
Huh?
know why? Because they work at keeping it that way.
Right, and I think they deserve credit for that.
But even at that, we're still gonna have trouble because of the school.
Well, we're always going to have trouble.
Yeah, but you know, it gets really tiring. Because I don't wanna lose our highway department. because
I don't want to lose
roads we
anything.
Can't ride down.
I don't want to lose anything.
Well, we're gonna. And you know
Right.
what, you can do it.
Right?
If
I
I
don't-
might, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of go back to the budget thing, and I just want to throw in 2 cents before we got off of this. Just my 2 cents on the process would be that I think we should be open to the review process being longer than a Saturday. And I say that simply because I participated in the process. And when we had the multiple night meetings that were broken down with, let's say, 2 or 3 departments coming in per night, to me, it allows for more communication. And if you look at the present schedule, next Saturday, we have basically a half hour to talk to fire, a half hour to talk to police, who carry, $1.5 million worth of items in their departments and are responsible for most of the capital items. And then we just push back everybody else. I think, the other way worked well. It allowed for more time and, let's say, more vigorous discussion. That's it.
Thank you.
I have to agree with Bob. When we did go through on the multiples of evenings, we had 3 or 4 departments, depending on the size. We were able to take and end up on the larger departments, give a whole evening to them, and got a lot of good information, a lot of pushback, and I actually had when we asked very difficult questions. And this is throughout the committee. You had a department heads actually having to agree and end up adjusting the budget and basically saying, "Oh, okay, I got your point. We may have asked for too much."
Yeah, whatever.
All right. We already discussed the capital special article email. Next up would be Will, you had asked to discuss Bob's CPC fund usage email. Or Bob, either one of you, if you want to.
I'll let Bob talk about that. I wanted, he wasn't on the meeting, the committee at the time, and I wanted that at least to bring it up that they can discuss it.
All right. Well, as you know, I have concerns with the CPC funding of the proposed Gilman Waite project through the Recreation Commission as it stands for a number of reasons, starting with process, whether or not they're even eligible. You know, we go back to, you can go right to the deed on Gilman Waite, and it says for preference of the high school of the town. Now, just taking that alone, Templeton hasn't had a high school since 1954. In 1955, we started using the district. The district itself is no different than Monty Tech is for Templeton. It's a separate entity. Our kids go to school there and we pay them for the service. So that in itself sounds like a problem. And then if you look at the CPC funding requirements, it all talks about city, town, municipality. No place in there does it say regional, district. And no place in there does it talk about, let's say well, it does talk about certain things. You know, if you look under the funding aspect, it knocked out the concession stand, which has already been removed. Now, if right now at present, the bathrooms are listed as accessible, but I suggest that under the present guidelines presented by Mr. Dill through the Recreation Department, stating that the bathrooms would not be public and would be utilized for the players basically and for the school, takes them out of CPC eligibility. So then it goes from there, you got to look at the actual project and what they're trying to do. Now, if you look at the email I sent you with the attachments, there's an attachment that shows the field and the proposed watering agreement or the proposed watering plan. Now, that's roughly 6 acres of irrigated space with 156 sprinkler heads and 39 circuits. Those 39 circuits can only work one at a time with the water from the well. And, you know, just doing some simple numbers, Scott said they're going to water 1 hour at night and 1 hour in the morning. Well, if they're going to do that, it's going to take a week every night and every morning to water this field once with 1/16 of an inch of water, which is due. It's just nothing. You know, it takes 27,000 plus gallons of water to water 1 acre of land with 1 inch of water. And they're doing 6. You know, my concern with this is multifold, that we're doing what Templeton always does, is put the cart before the horse. We're going to set up this irrigation system. We're going to plan on putting it on this well. The well's not going to function up to specs. So either the field's going to corrode or we're going to try and put it on the town's water supply, which, you know, everybody's pointed against. The cost would be prohibitive, this, that, the other. Nobody's checked to see if this system will even work based on the pounds per square inch required for the heads. And, you know, from what I've been told, the dirt there is sand, or it's a gravel pit. You know, the flip side of that is, what's the purpose? It seems like this is for the school. If this is for the school, then the school should be in charge and funding it. It shouldn't be CPC money. It shouldn't be the rec department. And I honestly am just horrified looking at this plan at you know, the potential money pit is what I see. I don't know if anybody's been down there recently, but I went down there just the other day, and you know, snowmobile tracks all over. So I just don't know how, you know, this is justified in Templeton. It's a large expenditure with questionable legality, questionable function.
Hey, Bob, has your question been answered, or your, I don't want to say claims, because that's
Yeah,
not what I'm trying to say, but
sure. You can
because
use
I think-
claims, Tony. I'm fine.
okay, have they been addressed to the CPC and have they answered them?
I've sent copies. I actually sent a copy of this off, I believe, to them. But yeah, there's been items brought up. When I initially brought this up, I was told that there was an item that fell right into this category on the CPA funding site. So I went to that and sure enough, looked at this item, and that item is the one that I sent back that stated the concession stand is not a legal usage. So yeah, I've gotten answers, but they haven't, you know, been any good. I haven't gotten any specifics. You've got what I've got from Bob regarding the well.
Well, like I know the concession stand has been up there for years. I mean, when my kids were little, playing soccer or softball up there, that facility was built, and it was, people were finishing it, you know, a little bit every year, and then so I was surprised to see that there was needed money for that.
It's one of those poorly planned, poorly started projects.
Yeah, I mean, some people probably did a nice thing and donated, you know, the cinder blocks and whatever, but then it just kind of comes to a screeching halt.
Just to take an end, let me weigh in on that, Tony. It wasn't all just donated. The town, if you go back, had warrant articles giving Pajari funds $50,000 or better to take and end up Gilman Waite, to take and end up doing all the projects over there. So it wasn't like the town
Well,
did not.
what projects have they done, Will? I mean, they built the softball field.
There's the children's play area that's actually
Right.
named the Pajari, you know, whatever.
Yeah, okay, I remember that. And they redid the basketball court up there, the tennis courts up there.
To answer your question, he did copy the chairman of the Conservation Preservation. He's on the email. You got
I
him
mean,
on here, Bob.
I'll admit, I haven't been up to Gilman Waite in years, but I think the town's 275th parade was the last time I was up there. So I guess before I comment, I should go up and look at it and see what's what.
The question I have to go along with Bob is, if we're putting that amount of money into this field, why hasn't the district put in money to their football field and also into the baseball field that they have? I mean, they got 2 fields there. They have not put any sprinkler systems
Because
at
they're
all.
moving the baseball field to Gilman Waite.
Well, that's my point, Tony, too, is that they have 40 acres. The school has 40 acres on Ballinsville Road. They have probably 15 acres that they're not utilizing for anything. But yet, this just to me is again one of those sloppy, sideline methods of funding something. And I mean, I can understand where people want to see Gilman Way completed and they want this done and they want that done, but let's do it right. And let's do things well and let's do things right. Let's not start off, well, I can do this for $1.380 and then come back 40 times for money and make it a pain in the butt project.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been for different events that my kids have been in, other high schools in here. I'm going to be like Will for one. Sorry, Will. Other communities that have these beautiful artificial fields with tracks around them. And I wonder if they're sponsored because it always has like a big Dunkin' Donuts logo or something. And, we have what we have for the small town.
Can I say?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Beth.
I'm gotten to the point where I'm really kind of fed up. We did the senior center. Now the roof is so bad, nobody can get on it. We spent a lot of money there. We built we went out for money for the police station. And I'm thinking in my head, we can afford this until the next year when they turned around and came back for more. There was no plan when they came up with this idea for Gilman Way. You got this Mr. Dill negotiating with the high school. He is not an elected official. There is no plan at all. And CPC cannot hand out money like M&Ms. They should at least ask for a plan. And volunteer groups come and go like the wind. I can tell you now, I will not give them this money over my dead body because the irrigation system won't work.
Yeah, Bev, I understand.
But it does go to town floor, correct?
Yeah.
It goes to town floor so the people can decide.
Right. I agree with that.
There, you gotta have a plan that makes sense when you go to do stuff like this.
Well, it's possible that some people may think their plan does make sense. As Tony said earlier, we do all have a different opinion on it. I think that, and that's why if it does go to town floor, you certainly have your right to vote no if that's your choice.
And then we'll end up having to dump more money into it.
So having not talked to Scott Dill, he may have it. I think he's trying to do something good for the youth of this community.
Of course he is. I didn't say he didn't.
And I haven't seen, maybe they do have a plan. Maybe they haven't done a good job of telling the people what the plan is. Take Scout Hall, for example. That's still sitting there. How much money have we spent on that? And there's no plan for Scout Hall, but we threw money at that. So
absolutely.
And that vote went before the town, and they sold it to town a bill of goods.
Doesn't the CPC vote have to go? The funding for them have to go?
How much? Yes.
Yeah. So how much oversight do we have into, as long as they're following their rules, and I'm not saying they are because Bob obviously brought up some things that make you question. If they're following their rules with their money that they're given by grants.
Their money, it's our money.
I thought CPC
but it's under the control of their committee.
Yeah, but it's tax dollars.
All of it? I thought the state gave them matching money.
No, it's matching funds.
Some years.
Okay. All right. So, if their budget's voted, then we're essentially voting them the ability to spend it as long as it's legally. It's just like any other department.
But we also have the ability, when their warrant article comes up, to agree or disagree on any particular item.
Absolutely.
As a committee.
That's my point. That's my only reason for bringing it up is that, my personal belief is that this is a improper expenditure of funds for the taxpayers' benefit. And that's really just my position as an advisory committee member and as a human being, but that's my only purpose.
I understand that, Bob, and
Yep.
and certainly agree with that position. Will, yes, we could, as a committee, say no, but each one of us have our own vote as to whether we think it should be spent or not. So,
Well, that's part of the process as we go through reviewing any of the articles. We vote
right,
articles as a committee, whether it's 7-0, whether it's 4-3 or whatever, and then it still goes to town's floor. So whether we're for it or against it as a committee, we still each have our votes on town's floor.
Yep.
So that's why when the articles are finalized and we sit down and review the final articles, that's when we have our input. Pre-town meeting, we have our decision so that the townspeople know it, get it in the voter guide. And then still whether town floor, just because someone voted here that they're for it, doesn't mean town floor, they can't change their mind.
Right.
So
But
that's,
it's good because if there are problems in the process, at least discussing it, and maybe one of us will meet with them, or the committee should meet with them, probably will during that meeting.
yeah, why don't we
Because
invite them?
it's got to get better. It really does. The process that they have. I know when we did CPC funds for the town hall, well, you did a whole plan, right?
Yes, we presented a whole plan to them, and it was detailed with estimates, etc.
Yeah,
And,
okay, so
and when
we
it was
don't,
when it was redone by Doug, it was updated.
okay, so do
well,
we know
I think if
that,
individuals have problems with the CPC process, then maybe they should get onto the CPC agenda and discuss as a taxpayer what the issues are. As a committee here, we will, when we get the articles, that's when we should discuss and vote on whether we support the projects or not, and then move forward. Otherwise, we could sit here and talk about every single article on every single town meeting warrant. And until we get the actual article and to vote on it, I mean, we've got the information from Bob. There may be information we don't have from, Parks and Recreation, or they may have a fantastic plan that we don't know. And there may be things out there that need to be added, but I think that we could keep talking on this without having all the information, and the information we have at pre-town meeting is what we have to make our decision on.
That's a bad assumption that they can think that they have a plan, because I watched the recreation meeting, and all they did is had a general conversation. They didn't seem to have any plan about addressing some of the issues.
I would like
they
to
may
say
have a
something
plan.
in this regard, because I've asked everybody and their brother for information regarding this project, and the information that you have is the best information that I've got from the DPW, from the Recreation Department, from the CPC, from the administration, and from the Water Department, and from a well digger. So if they have a better plan, they're hiding it.
All right.
well, we never said they had
Is,
a good plan. We just don't know if they have a plan. It may not be as detailed as it probably should be, but we don't know if they have. I can't believe that somebody's just okay, well, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this.
It's Templeton. We do it all the time.
Good point, Bob.
All right, Bob, next on the agenda, you had wanted to bring up municipal finance management training.
Yeah, I would like to put that on hold if you don't mind, like to table that for a future evening.
Okay. Unless someone has an issue with that, I have no problem with that.
No, I'm good.
Is there a particular reason, Bob?
Just my feeling on it right now.
Okay, because I've gone to that site that you've brought up, and there's a lot of information.
Yeah,
that I
that's
think
one of the reasons is time.
Okay. Okay, so it's basically a time issue for this evening you're talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
I just think it would be better spent when we wouldn't be rushed and would have some time to discuss it.
I agree with you there because there's a lot of information on that site.
Yes, thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda is committee members' comments. As always, I think it should be ladies first. So Beverly, you're up.
Oh, let's see, what do I want to say? I want to say that I'm going to work really hard for the people in this town. And my goal is to have things clearer so that people are comfortable coming to town meeting. Hopefully the younger people will come, and they have to understand that the budget encompasses a lot. And I think that's my goal in being on this committee. You know, I think trying to make the town work better is a goal that we all have. So tonight was a good meeting. We had a lot of good discussion. I think that was all right.
Very good. Thank you, Beverly. Amy?
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Chicken.
Continuing around, Bob?
I've actually spoken enough tonight. I'm good.
Okay. Will?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to have you take this as criticism of you being chairman. It's just
Always open to criticism.
well, this is not criticism. I would like to take an end up doing the same thing that Tony did, is to have anytime we got an email, he had a process where as soon as it hit advisory, the advisory site, it was sent out to all of us. It would stop the idea of us getting emails 2 and 3 days later. And I've run into this a couple of times. I think I mentioned this before. I actually was talking to somebody that sent us the email and said, "Didn't you get the email? I sent it out 2 days ago." And I went, "No, I haven't got that yet." And it was the next day that I received it. So to take and speed the process up, I have to agree. Tony's going to say, "Will's agreeing with me. I can't believe it." I like the way he had it set up, where any emails that came to advisory was sent out to all the members. This way, we got a chance, and it would stop the fact that you ended up having to take and end up issuing the BVA twice by mistake, and the fact that you had an oversight as far as the Zoom meeting tonight. So that's just an input there.
Make it life easier.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot easier to take and end up doing that. There was one other point I was going to make on Bev's. Now I lost my train of thought about. It will. It'll probably come after the meetings. That's how us old people work. Excuse me. But that would be helpful, Tom. I have to applaud you because the agenda was out earlier. It gave us a chance to end up doing a little bit of research beforehand. So that's working better. I mean, you took the comments that I made and acted on them, and I think that's in a positive manner. I'd like to see the same thing on this here, so that the emails would come readily to us all. So we, that's for now. That's it.
I would second that.
Tom, you're muted.
Tony, did you have anything?
Well, Will said it. I'm stunned he agreed with something I said. No, I'm just kidding,
Raise the
Will.
flag.
I'm just kidding.
I
Will.
don't disagree with you all the time. You know that.
And I don't disagree with you all the time. No, I think I said enough tonight.
All right. And as far as I don't have anything additional that we haven't already gone over for tonight. So going to entertain a motion to adjourn if anyone would so.
Moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Bev?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Will?